trouble. We got trouble. How much trouble? Too much trouble.
This is We the People with Forrest Wilson. And now, here is Forrest Wilson.
And welcome to The Resistance. Your host, Forrest Wilson. The lines are open, 904-222-TALK, 904-222-TALK. That's 904-222-8255. So the United Healthcare representative calls me last week to inform me of some good news and some bad news. And I said, well, give me the bad news first. So the agent for the company that I consult with tells me, you've got a 13% increase in your premiums. And I said, yeah, but I thought premiums were going down. He said, no, a 13% increase. I said, well, what could possibly be the good news? He said, your all-male population is considered gender neutral now. And I said, what? Gender neutral? I work in the energy field, and I don't know if you can, but can you imagine telling a crew of roughnecks that you're now gender neutral? Only from the twisted minds of the mental midgets in our feral government do you get the designation gender neutral. I mean, really? I don't know what the hell gender neutral is. I guess it goes along with the new equal pay, equal rights, equal opportunity, now equal gender, otherwise known as gender neutral. The only thing worse than this administration is its insane laws for us, while the president refuses to faithfully execute the office of the presidency by violating numerous laws himself, often at the same time. And we've got the prospect of a Hillary Clinton regime. This woman is going to extend the misery perpetrated by these morons. And yes, she will. She's an Alinsky communist. Now, I've attempted to get Cecil Richards, the president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, to come on this show and discuss the Margaret Sanger Award. I've made numerous phone calls personally to her press agent trying to get her to come on. And you wonder why. Well, it's because this is one of Mrs. Clinton's accomplishments. Not too long ago, I said that she had no accomplishments, and I was really referring to her stewardship at the State Department. But I went on and did some research trying to find something that I could call an accomplishment, at least in my mind, and I came across an article written by this liberal Leslie Marshall. She's a left-wing radio talk show host and blogger, and her research concludes that as a U.S. Senator, she was the first lady to be elected to this office. And she goes on, although her major initiative, the Clinton health care plan, failed, it certainly set the groundwork for the health care law we have today, the Affordable Care Act. She encouraged older women to seek a mammogram for early detection of breast cancer, which is covered by Medicare, and successfully sought to increase research funding for prostate cancer and childhood asthma at the NIH. Well, that's fine. I don't know if it's an accomplishment. She's also the first lady to hold a postgraduate degree, and she traveled to more countries than any other first lady had at that time. I think Michelle Obama has her beat now, so much for that accomplishment. But it's really a bunch of mush. Her accomplishments seem more like failures, like Hillary Claire. And at best, on the surface, it's just advocacy for issues that anyone would naturally advocate for. I mean, come on. Most older women have breasts. If they still have a physician, don't you think their physician would advocate for their patient to get their breast mammogrammed? The lines are open, 904-222-TALK, 904-222-TALK. That's 904-222-8255. So Hill was awarded in 2009 the Margaret Sanger Award by the Planned Parenthood Federation of America. The Margaret Sanger Award is presented annually to recognize leadership, excellence, and outstanding contributions to the reproductive health and rights movement. Now, I'm not sure why they gave her the award, but I want to talk about Margaret Sanger. Do you have any idea who she was? Well, if we could get Cecil Richards, perhaps she'd give us a view into Margaret Sanger. But if you go to Planned Parenthood's website and read about Margaret Sanger, it's completely whitewashed. So according to the Family Research Council, the American Birth Control League, the predecessor to Planned Parenthood, worked in an intentional and systematic manner to reduce the Black American population by establishing the Negro Project. Margaret Sanger enlisted Black leaders in her endeavor by convincing them that birth control was in the African American community's best interest. However, her real agenda remained. As she once said, we should hire 3 or 4 colored ministers, preferably with social service backgrounds and with engaging personalities. Community organizers. The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal. We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs in any of their more rebellious members. So let me give this thing to you straight. 34% of all abortions since Roe versus Wade are black babies. 17 million out of an estimated 50 million abortions. And, you know, I don't really care whether you're pro-choice, no choice, or can't make a choice. These numbers are absolutely stunning. And there's more. In an infamous quote, "An America needs a code for babies," 27th March, 1934, give dysgenic groups, people with bad genes, in our population their choice of segregation or compulsory sterilization. And Hillary Clinton accepts an award, a Margaret Sanger Award in 2009. Does Hillary accept the views of Margaret Sanger, the great eugenicist? She seems to be engaged in a war on women. Case in point, her advocacy for a child rapist. Matthew Continetti writes in the Free Beacon, in 1975, before she married Bill Clinton, Hillary Rodham Clinton defended a child rapist in Arkansas court. She was not a public defender. No one ordered her to take the case. An ambitious young lawyer, she was asked by a friend if she would represent the accused, and she agreed. And her defense was successful, attacking the credibility of the 12-year-old victim on the one hand and questioning the chain of evidence on the other. Clinton got a plea bargain for her client. He served 10 months in prison. Continetti goes on, quoting Melinda Hennenberger, defending even a child rapist as vigorously as possible might be a plus if you were running to lead the American Bar Association, but wouldn't her apparent willingness to attack a 6th grader compromise a presidential run? So you can add advocacy for a child rapist to Hill's list of accomplishments. My question is, what has she done for liberty? Nothing. Not one accomplishment to further the cause of human freedom. Nothing. The lines are open, 904-222-TALK, 904-222-TALK, 904-222-8255. Do you know who the recipient in 2014 is?
What difference at this point does it make?
Well, you have to go to the Planned Parenthood website to find out. And you can view a list of all Margaret Sanger awardees and judge for yourself. But you got to remember, you're going to have to dig to understand the founder of Planned Parenthood. And, you know, you're supporting this organization with your tax dollars. They receive roughly 46% of their budget from federal and state grants and contracts. I mean, that just gives me the willies when I read that. Contracts. Irrespective of your views on abortion, we're approaching Mao numbers, 50 million. And you probably never heard of the Margaret Sanger Award. Congratulations, Hillary. You deserve it. Mao Zedong would be proud. So, back here in the States, while Iraq burns, our president fundraises. We have an invasion on the southern border, and he fundraises. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, is on the rise. The leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, said, "I'll see you guys in New York," when he was released in 2009 from our custody. He's a model for the recently released Taliban 5. This person has proven that he's definitely a threat. He will carry out his promises, and he has the resources in which to do so, so says Manny Gomez, a former FBI agent who investigated major terrorism cases. Then we've got the mayor of New York weighing in. We're quite aware of the statements he's made, Bill de Blasio, the admitted communist, said. We're quite aware of the growth of this organization, and it's something I talk to Police Commissioner Bratton about regularly. Let me tell you, you better start doing something other than talking, Mr. de Blasio, and encourage your party to consider something other than immigration reform, like securing the southern border and the northern border for that matter. So the president lets us know on Friday that he's sending a force of 300 Green Berets as military advisors to Iraq. I don't know, this sounds a lot like the movie 300. And I wonder if that's where he got his strategy. While Iraq disintegrates before the eyes of the world, its new leaders vowing to attack the West, and we send 300. I don't think there really is a good side for us to support. One is Shia and the Maliki government, supported by the Shia Iranian regime, and the other is Sunni, aligned with the terrorists and al-Baghdadi. And I'm telling you, this is bad. This is really bad. I had the opportunity to read the dossier on Saddam's inner circle, and I guess at that time we viewed him as a legitimate government, but my conclusion was, without exception, every one of his cabinet members was a serial mass murderer. I mean, that's really what we're dealing with here. So we've got the illusion of security in this country, and you can't have a free and open society without a strong national defense, and one major component of that defense is border control. The Mexicans have better border control than we do. Just look at the case of Marine Sergeant Tamarisi. He's sitting in a Mexican prison for accidentally crossing the border with guns he had illegally here, and he's still in prison. And then there are the Republicans, our opposition. And if you think your representative is conservative, which is what we need to combat these community organizers, socialist communists throughout our government, look no further than the Heritage Foundation and the scorecard, which ranks members of Congress by their voting record and sorts them from a score of 100 to 0. Senator Mike Lee, Republican Utah, is a 100. Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat New York, and Representative Nancy Pelosi, Democrat San Francisco, they're a 0. And by the way, Nancy Pelosi is the 2014 recipient of the Margaret Sanger Award. Congratulations, Nancy. I want to bring in a guest when we return, and hopefully this person can help provide some opposition for the Republican Party. You're listening to Forrest Wilson, AM 600, The Resistance. I'll be right back.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
Okay, we're back, and we're talking about the Heritage Foundation scorecard and members of Congress and their voting record, and it sorts them from a score of 100 to 0, 100 being Mike Lee, 0 being Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. And my next guest is Ryman Shoaf. He's in studio with me. Mr. Shoaf is a retired Navy captain, a Republican candidate for Florida's 4th Congressional District, the seat currently held by Ander Crenshaw. Welcome, Ryman, and thank you for your service to this nation.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
So we've got the House Majority Leader, Eric Cantor, lost his primary to economics professor Dave Bratt. Are you hoping for a similar defeat against Ander Crenshaw?
I think history is going to repeat itself.
Well, I hope you're right. Now, Crenshaw gets a 43 on the Heritage Scorecard rating, and when I went to the scorecard, I had everybody ranked because I wanted to see really where I would draw the line. And you said that Ander Crenshaw was 4 or 5 above Corrine Brown. Now, she's got an 11. He's got a 43. Can you explain that difference?
Yeah, when I was telling you that, you can sort that any way you want to, that particular list. And if you just pull it up, it'll do all of the reps and all of the senators at the same time. And so what I told you to do is go in and sort them by House of Representatives in just Florida. So when I go around Nassau, Baker, and Duval County, I get people, when they find out that I'm running, they'll tell me, hey, who are you running against? Ander Crenshaw. Oh, well, I wish we could get rid of Corrine Brown. I hear that all the time. And what I point out to them is if you don't like Corrine Brown, when you go to the Heritage ranking and look at how they vote, how our North Florida representatives vote, Ander Crenshaw is only 5 names above Corrine Brown.
And I'm looking at it right now, and in fact, he is 5 names above Corrine Brown. Yeah, she's a socialist, and she doesn't even know it.
Yeah, but she doesn't. I mean, she stands up for what she thinks is important. She doesn't think the Constitution is anything of value, in my opinion, but she doesn't try to hide that. But we live in the second most Republican district in Florida, and yet our representative in the 4th district, his name is only 4 names above Corrine Brown. So I'm not understanding if this is such a conservative area why we have a representative who has a record that's just 4 names above Corrine Brown.
If you were to win, where would you rank yourself?
Oh, I'll be at the top.
You'd be a 100.
I'll be a 100, yeah.
Okay, well, I want to get your reaction to the new House Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, Republican. He was just put up there, and he was interviewed recently on One American News Network, and I'm going to play this clip here.
What are some of your just internal personal feelings about this ride that you've been on here in the last few days?
Well, first, I just feel very blessed. The idea that a grandson of a cattle rancher and the son of a firefighter would even have the opportunity to run for majority whip and would then become majority leader. Only in America do you get that type of opportunity. The one thing I would say, you've got to listen to the voters. So I firmly believe that you have to have the courage to lead, but the wisdom to listen. And I think that makes a big difference.
Listen, I don't think they're listening at all. I think if they listened to me and people like yourself, we wouldn't be in the fix we're in.
Well, I tend to agree with you, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be running against Ander Crenshaw at this point. And you hear candidates all the time. They'll say, why don't you vote for me? And I'm going to be bipartisan. I'm not going to have any problem reaching across the aisle. And my experience is not in politics. My experience is wearing a uniform in the United States Navy. And when you wear a uniform, you don't learn a lot about politics, but you learn a lot about leadership. And I'm telling you, leadership beats bipartisanship every day of the week. And if you create a vision, where there is no vision, the people perish. You create a vision for this country that is upbeat, that is centers around the Constitution, that's about personal responsibility, about economic growth, and a government that actually creates the environment for private sector job growth. That's an environment that everybody can succeed in. And if you create that environment, if you have that vision, if you lead on that vision, you don't have to worry about reaching across the aisle, because the aisle will come to you. Leadership beats bipartisanship every day.
I want to play one more clip before the break. This is Kevin McCarthy, the new House Majority Leader. Go ahead.
We want to be able to have time that the families can grow financially. We don't want them to continue to live paycheck to paycheck.
What role does government play in people living paycheck to paycheck? This sounds more like income inequality.
Well, they certainly can create the conditions where people live paycheck to paycheck. I mean, we have 21 million people right now unemployed. I was reading an article not too long ago where it said that there were 3 million open jobs in corporate America right now. If you have 3 million open jobs and 21 million people looking for those jobs, what happens to the wages? It drives wages down. Because if you want work at the wage that the business wants to pay you, and you don't want to take that, guess what? There's 20 people behind you willing to accept that. We want a government that has low taxes, low regulation, and works with business so that business is always growing. Small business, medium business, large business. Wouldn't you like to see an environment right now where you had 21 million jobs open and only 3 million people looking for jobs because everybody's got a job? What would happen to wages then? Wages would have to go up. But we have got a government that does everything it can to stifle growth, stifle the business. It's nothing but taxes and regulation on and on and on. It never ends, and businesses really can't get their feet underneath them.
There's 530 federal agencies, and then there's a whole host of what they call quasi-federal agencies like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. How many federal agencies do we need?
Certainly not that many. The biggest issue with all of these regulatory entities is that, according to the Constitution, the only entity that creates law is the legislative branch. That would be Article 1 of the Constitution. And those people are elected by us, the people. So we elect them. If they don't pass the laws that are good for us, then you know what? We can vote them out. But what they've done is the progressives have moved that ability for law into all these other entities. It's not the legislative branch, but when they make these regulations, they have the force of law. So now you're running a business. Next thing you know, HUD or EPA or IRS or somebody's coming to your business, and then you go to your congressman, and your congressman says, I can't do anything about it. I didn't write that law, because these other entities have all the power to create these regulations that have the effect of law. And then you wonder why Congress has a 7% approval rating. It's because their power base has been diminished because of the progressive movement.
Yes, and the way they do it is they take and put something in the Federal Register, and then these federal agencies, and then Congress has 60 days to take up the the ruling. If they don't, then it becomes law.
Yeah, that's true. And look at the last State of the Union address where the president said, if Congress wouldn't act, that he would. Are you kidding me? Congress won't act and I will? Hey, listen, that's not his responsibility. And then for the Democrats to get up and cheer at that is shameful. That is not a republic. That is not a government who represents its people. Those in Washington are there to serve us, and way too many people in Washington are there seeking to be served by serving us, the American citizen. You see it more and more, and that's why people are angry. I believe that.
Well, I'm talking to Ryman Shoaf. He's challenging Ander Crenshaw in the 4th District election here coming up soon. We're going to talk more about it. I was on Google and on one of my favorite news sites, and I got this advertisement served up to me. Now, I don't live in the 4th District, but it says, Ander Crenshaw, the conservative for Congress, 100% opposed to amnesty. But the thing missing from that ad is, I guess he's 100% opposed to amnesty, but what about securing the border? How do you feel about that? What can we do?
Well, they always, the left always likes to take the securing of the border and the immigration issue as the same issue, and it's not. We are a country of immigrants. We're not against immigration. I mean, if you go back far enough in many of our family history, we generally came from another country, mine being German. But what they do is they throw the securing of the border, and the securing of the border is not an immigration issue. That's a national security issue. Separate the two, fix immigration, and let's secure the border.
We'll be right back. I'm talking to Ryman Shoaf, candidate for 4th Congressional District against Ander Crenshaw, AM 600, WBOB, The Resistance, Forrest Wilson. We'll be right back.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here is Forrest.
And we're back on The Resistance, Forrest Wilson, 904-222-TALK, 904-222-8255. My guest in studio is Ryman Shoaf, running for the 4th Congressional District in Florida against Republican incumbent Ander Crenshaw. We were talking about immigration and your views and what you believe Ander stands for. Let's fill in some of those blanks, Ryman.
Yeah, thanks, Forrest. I appreciate that. Yeah, that comes up when I'm talking to people quite often. Because it's in the news what's going on with immigration issues and amnesty, and I'm against amnesty. And when I talk to other immigrants, these are folks who came to America, they're first-generation immigrants, and they tell me flat out, no amnesty. We earned it. We love this country. We're American citizens now, and we don't want it just given away. But what the left does is it pits the citizens against the immigrants. It's not the immigrants' problem or fault what's going on right now, and it's not the citizens' fault what's going on right now. I mean, of course they want to come to America. This is a great country. I mean, there's a reason that people don't try to immigrate into North Korea or Iran. Those places suck. Nobody wants to go there. They want to come here. This is a great country.
And they're not going to Mexico either.
No, they're coming here, and there's a reason for that. But what happens is that, first of all, why do we have an immigration problem? Don't we have a U.S. Customs and Department of Immigration? What is the Department of Immigration doing? And yet, when you talk to Democrats, you talk to Republicans, all they talk about is amnesty. I'd like to turn on C-SPAN and have maybe Nancy Pelosi or Harry Reid or somebody maybe call in whoever's running the Department of Immigration and say, hey, how come you're not doing your job? Because if the Department of Immigration was doing their job, then we wouldn't have an immigration problem, would we? I mean, why is it that the government, they don't do their job, and yet they hold the citizen accountable, or they hold the immigrant accountable? They never hold themselves accountable. And you know what? Maybe we ought to send some people to Washington to hold the government accountable. So what happens is you come in, you want to be a citizen. You want to do it the right way. So you go through and you do all the paperwork. But the line is so long. I mean, it's years and years in order to become a citizen. And then your time expires. So now you have a choice. You either stay here in America, you've already been working a job for several years, or you go back to where you came from. You don't want to go back there. You left it for a reason. Well, now you have a choice. You go back home where you came from, or now you're illegal. Well, customs, they don't, or not customs, but the Department of Immigration, they don't enforce it. Now your visa is expired. Guess what? The government just caused you to become an illegal. You don't want to be an illegal. Why don't we fix the immigration department first if we can, if it's possible? So then you don't have people all backed up. Look, Reagan gave amnesty. Here we are all these years later, we got the same problem again. You give amnesty again, 10, 15 years from now, you're going to have the same problem again. It is not the citizens' fault. It is not the immigrants' fault. It is the government's fault. And I think it's time we hold them accountable.
Well, and it's a national security issue. Look, Miramal Kanzi, the first domestic terrorist who attacked CIA headquarters January 25th, 1993, was here on a falsified, expired visa.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid that we're going to get terrorists coming across the northern or southern border in the very near future, if they haven't already.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And what I tell people is about the securing of the border. First of all, the securing of the border is not an immigration issue. It's a national security issue, and you've got to separate those two issues, because what the left likes to do is they like to say, oh, those mean Republicans, those mean conservatives. They're just trying to keep the good people out. Look, some guy walking across the border because he wants to pick strawberries and take care of his family, that's no big deal. Some guy walking across the border to cause another 9/11, that is a big deal. That's why the securing of the border is not an immigration issue. It's a national security issue. Separate the two, secure our border, make our country secure, and then fix the immigration problem, but hold the government accountable, not the citizen, not the immigrant.
I don't understand why we can't do that now. I mean, we've got approximately 30 million illegals in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we do it now? Why don't we do it now?
I just think it's the left's way of pitting one group of Americans against the next. I mean, look at their strategy. They're always pitting rich against poor, immigrant against citizen. I mean, it's always
man against woman.
Man against woman. I mean, it's always dividing us. You know, we're not a country divided. We're a country united. I mean, even Lincoln said that a divided house will not stand. That hasn't changed. But the problem is that we have too many people in Washington that always seek to divide us. I mean, okay, Ander Crenshaw sent you something that said he's 100% opposed to amnesty, but yet he's also 100% supporting the Chamber of Commerce, who is 100% for amnesty. Okay, Ander, if you're listening, are you opposed to amnesty or not? Because you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. I mean, either you're for amnesty or against it. And if you're supporting the Chamber of Commerce, who is 100% for amnesty, you can't have it both ways.
Is there any debate scheduled between you and Ander Crenshaw?
No, there's no debates, and we don't expect any debates. But there is.
Have you asked for one?
Well, we haven't even asked for one. But I will say on 26 August there's an election, and if that swings my way, we won't have to worry about a debate at that point.
Now that date's important. It's not the typical November election. This is a primary. There is no Democrat challenger. Are there any other primary challengers?
There are two NPA, which is no party affiliate. I can't even tell you their names, so we don't really see them doing anything. The two main members on this ticket is Ryman Shoaf and Ander Crenshaw. And on 26 August, people in the 4th District, you have a choice to make. You can vote for a career politician, or you can vote for a career naval officer. You can vote for someone. I hear this all the time. Well, why should we vote for you? Because you're not well connected. And I'm telling you, Ander Crenshaw is well connected. That is true. That is a true statement. And I want people to vote their values. And having a well-connected career politician, if that's important to you, then go ahead and vote for that person. But when people ask me, well, why should they vote for Ryman? I tell them it's because it's called the U.S. House of Representatives. It's not called the U.S. House of the Well-Connected. If all you want is a well-connected career politician, then guess what? That's why we have $17 trillion worth of debt. That's why nothing ever changes. That's why we see this issue with amnesty and immigrants and on and on and on, because we send the same career politicians over and over and over to Washington. And on 26 August, everybody's hearing my voice. You got a chance to make change.
How can people donate to your campaign?
They can go to RymanShoaf.com, or they can go to Facebook/Ryman Shoaf, and all the information they need to give to the campaigns right there.
Is this your first in-studio interview?
Hey, you get an exclusive on that. I did do a call-in to one other show. I did do a call-in, but as far as actually coming into the studio for us, you're the first one.
Now, today, when you leave the studio, what are you going to do?
Well, before I came over here, I was walking for 2 hours, knocking on doors, and as soon as I'm done with you, I'm going to go back over on San Jose and knock on some more doors.
What kind of response are you getting?
Well, now I have a team that's also going out. I have a great campaign manager that is doing a phenomenal job, and I have just a wonderful group of volunteers. We show up every Saturday morning at 9:30, and then after church on Sunday, we show up at about 2 o'clock, and we walk for about 2 hours. So anybody that wants to help me, let me know. Go to RymanShoaf.com or the Facebook page, and I'll tell you how we can put you on that list. And I personally have knocked on 250 doors. And out of 250 doors, I've had one person tell me they're voting for Ander. I've had two to support and defend the Constitution. And when I got out 27 years later, 27 years, 3 months, and 16 days later, to be exact, nowhere was there a piece of paper that said, hey, Ryman, sign this piece of paper and you no longer have to support and defend the Constitution. That means that oath stays with me till the day I die. Now, the issue is that when we send members of Congress, they take that same oath. But it is no longer sufficient to send someone to Washington, D.C. who supports and defends the Constitution. We need to send people to D.C. who actually obey the Constitution. I'm firmly convinced that 80% of the issues that we see coming out of Washington, D.C. right now is because we have members there who don't follow the Constitution. They see the Constitution as the problem. I see the Constitution as the answer.
Are there socialist communists in our government?
Well, I don't know what's in a man's heart. I mean, I have read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, and I find it interesting that, when you read a book, the author always dedicates that book to someone, and when you look in the front of that book, Saul Alinsky dedicates it to Lucifer. Now, look, even people that are atheists don't name their sons Lucifer for a reason. Yet our president, who's a community organizer, has read that book, teaches that book, and is implementing the strategy out of that book. But I don't know why no one ever calls him on that, but I'll certainly put the word out now.
You're listening to The Resistance. Forrest Wilson. I'm talking to Ryman Shoaf, 4th Congressional District against Ander Crenshaw in the election on August 26th. It is a primary election. If he wins the primary, you go to Washington.
Yeah, November will be just a formality at that point. That's true.
And you need some money.
I'll take every penny that people would like to give me, but
Can I give you $5 here?
Sure, I will take that. Absolutely. You sure you want to go on record with that? IRS is listening. If not that, the NSA.
I have endured multiple audits as a result of my activism.
Yeah.
Give us the website again so that folks can go check you out. And if you want to contribute to Liberty, I think this man is, if he's 100 on that Heritage scorecard, then you've got my vote, although I can't vote for you. But
yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, it's RymanShoaf.com, RymanShoaf.com, or Ryman Shoaf at the Facebook page.
Stay tuned. We've got a few more minutes with Ryman Shoaf. If you want to weigh in, 904-222-TALK, 904-222-8255. You're listening to The Resistance. Forrest Wilson. We'll be right back.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here is Forrest.
And we're back. You're listening to The Resistance. Forrest Wilson. Lines are open, 904-222-TALK, 904-222-8255. My in-studio guest today is Ryman Shoaf, running for the 4th Congressional District against Ander Crenshaw. I'm looking at a Gallup poll, Ryman, and it says it basically ranks the confidence in various institutions, like the military is at the top, with 74% of the respondents saying they had a great deal and quite a lot of confidence in the military. Small business is 62%, 23% for the healthcare system, which is scary. And then Congress is 7%. I'm wondering, who are the 7% that have confidence in Congress?
I'm thinking if once I get there, it'll be 8%. We'll at least get something in the positive territory for there. And let me make this comment for us about folks, because we have a lot of veterans in this district and a lot of veterans in northern Florida. And here's your chance to send a veteran, one of us, to Washington, D.C. Right now, less than 20% of the members of the House of Representatives have any military experience at all, and that includes National Guard or reserve duty. Now, I got 27 years experience. I tell people all the time, I'm not a career politician. I'm a career naval officer. And even if there was no veterans in this district, I would stand up for veterans because I'm going to stand up for those issues that are important to me as someone who served during that time. So here's your chance, veterans, to make a difference. I think it's 19.6%. If I go there, it pushes it over 20%. And here's a chance on the 26th of August to do that.
Has a commander-in-chief lost the military, or is he on the road to losing the military?
Yeah, well, for civilians that are listening to us, I just don't think that civilians realize how important it is for the commander-in-chief as far as his actions toward the military. I mean, you can say what you want to about President Bush. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't like his policies, but he really reached out to those in the uniform and who wear uniform, and he is still reaching out to those even after his presidency is over. He does a lot for the wounded warriors, and you really just don't see that out of this president. And I'll just speak from the heart here a little bit. When I got out, I was living in D.C., and I got out in Bethesda. And Forrest, you would go into a room of veterans. I'm talking kids in their 20s. You'd go into a room of 10 men. There wouldn't be 5 arms and legs among all 10 of them. And what people don't realize is, you want to talk about the 99% and the 1%? Let me tell you, there's 1% of Americans who've done an incredible hard job, so the other 99% didn't have to. And when you have a commander-in-chief that's more interested in playing golf and running all over the world and taking vacations than really standing up for those in uniform, I tell you, it makes a difference.
When a politician goes in front of a military audience, like in a forward base camp, are they required to disarm? In other words, is that just a Democrat thing, or do Republicans do it too?
Well, it's neither Democrat or Republican. I mean, it just depends on whatever the security issue is at that particular time.
But wait a minute. We're talking about American service personnel, which ought to be armed. But I know when a Democrat goes in, they want them all to disarm. I'm just wondering if a Republican does.
That I don't know. I have been in the presence of President Obama twice, and I know the security was incredibly tight. And I was in uniform. I didn't show up, when.
Were you disarmed?
Well, I didn't go. I didn't have any arms on me at that time. I was up in Washington D.C., but I remember the security was incredible trying to get in. And I will tell you that the 2 times that I did that, the first time I was asked and I said yes, and the second time I was asked and said no, and I was told, "No, Captain, it's an order. You will go." So I did it for the second time. Didn't care to do it the second time, but I'll follow orders no matter what.
What was the event?
I taught national security strategy and policy at the National War College, which is at Fort McNair. And if you remember when Obama came on national television and laid out his Libya policy, I was on the back row. That was actually at National Defense University in the Lincoln Auditorium, and I was on the very back row. And the funny story is, I didn't want to go, but since I got ordered, I decided to go at the very end, and so I was on the back row, right next to Jake Tappert from ABC. And I didn't want to be on camera. And then I finish up and I go back to my office, and somebody sent an email in and says, "Hey, Ryman, were you just in there with the president?" I wrote him back. I said, "Are you kidding me? How did you see me?" He said, "Well, the CNN camera spun around, and I know your bald head anywhere, so I saw you in the back row." Like, goodness, don't tell my mom. She won't appreciate that at all. But yeah, I've been in his presence twice.
We're talking to Ryman Shoaf, 4th congressional candidate against Ander Crenshaw here on August 26th. That's the date. So if you're waiting for the November elections, you'll miss Ryman. You've got to go to the primary and vote in the primary. There will be no general election because there's no Democrat challenger. So if he wins, he goes to Washington. Overall, what's your strategy?
Give me more detail. Strategy.
What's your campaign strategy?
Oh, got it. Right. Well, I will tell you, you said something about the money, and I've talked to other folks who are campaigning, and that's almost the first thing that comes up is money. And yet when I talk to individuals, that's the last thing I bring up, because if you look at what happened with Eric Cantor, it's not all about the money. I mean, he had $5 million. We think Ander's going to raise about $2 million. We're going to try to raise $200,000. I'm not sure if we're going to get there, but I'll tell people he's going to spend $2 million to lose. I'm going to spend $200,000 to win. I'm a better investment. And if we don't get there, I'm telling you, we're doing it by knocking on doors, sending out emails. We have a program called I Elect. And if anyone will go to RymanShoaf.com or my Facebook page, we'll tell you how to get involved, because we're going to do it the old-fashioned way, and by wearing out our tennis shoes.
Yeah, and before you leave today, I want to get your website from you, because I'm going to go in and donate. By the way, I think I was one of the first people to interview Marco Rubio, so hopefully this will help your campaign.
Well, when I make it, you can have me back in here as much as you want to, Forrest, because I guess that will make me a definitely member of the resistance, won't it?
Absolutely. Fantastic. Listen, I want to thank you for coming in today, Ryman.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Ryman Shoaf, 4th congressional candidate against Ander Crenshaw. You're going to have to show up on August 26th to vote for him, because it's a primary election, and we can primary Ander Crenshaw. He's got a 43 rating on the Heritage Foundation scorecard. Now, I want to talk in the closing minutes of this show about Kevin Gates, the founder of Powhatan Energy Fund. He supported Obama for his presidency both times, contributing to his campaign. and working in his campaign. Then an Obama appointee from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, Norman Bay, the head of enforcement, charges Powhatan Energy Fund with market manipulation for trading electricity and receiving FERC-sanctioned rebates. Powhatan Energy Fund benefited greatly from these rebates, but they broke no administrative law or regulation. Mr. Gates, who I interviewed last week, has woken up to the harsh lies and tyranny of the Obama administration. He now espouses a libertarian view and opposes naturally the nomination of Norman Bay to the chair of FERC. FERC, meanwhile, will release nothing on the record of Norman Bay since his appointment in 2009 by President Obama. Now he's up for head of the FERC. In other words, he's no longer going to be in charge of enforcement. He'll be over the entire FERC regulatory administration. Norman Bay represents just another Obama henchman creating havoc with the citizenry through a federal agency. He uses the phone to ensure these agencies, full of his appointees, enact regulations like Norman Bay. We know nothing about Norman Bay, and he's coming up for a Senate vote. I guess he's passed his Senate hearings, but as far as any information on Norman Bay, there is none from 2009 to now in his role as the chief enforcer at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I mean, we've got to stop the regulations. We're literally getting about one every 2 hours, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And it's a threat. It's a threat to the Republican freedom. I'm going to vote in this primary if I can. I won't be able to vote for Ryman Shoaf, but I'm going to contribute to his campaign. But I'm going to make sure that the Republican that I send from my district is for the Constitution and to take down the 530 regulatory agencies. I'm not saying we don't need regulation. We do. But over 1 million regulations, I don't know if I'm in compliance. I don't think anybody can know if they're in compliance. And when you've got that set of circumstances, you really run the risk for any type of opposition to be squashed by possibly a federal agency. I know I had one come after me right after the first time Barack Obama was elected. I spoke out against his plans for the Affordable Health Care Act, and I found myself in a HUD audit, in addition to 3 other audits, a HUD audit conducted out of Chicago. I mean, these regulatory agencies really have a lot of power. So when he talks about the phone, he's really talking about picking up and calling one of his 530 or so appointees and having them unleash regulations and regulatory authority on the citizenry. You've really got to look into this to understand what's going on. And I recommend you tune in here weekly, 2 to 3 on Saturday, 1 hour for the Republic, AM 600. You've been listening to The Resistance with Forrest Wilson. I hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Well, I'm running down